Hello guys, this is new Reddit beautiful story.
Title: What choices people make that I would never choose. So I've been thinking a lot about life choices lately. You know, those moments when you stand back and think, wow, that's something I would never do. And I'm not talking about minor stuff, like not picking up after yourself or choosing a strange flavor of ice cream. I mean the big things, the life decisions that shape your entire future. Choices that, to me, seem almost unthinkable. I know that every person has their own path in life, and that's fine. Some people find happiness in ways that I can't even imagine, and I'm sure the same is true for others when they look at the way I've chosen to live. But some choices, well, let me just say, they're choices I could never make. The choice to stay in a toxic relationship. Let's start with one of the most obvious ones, but one that always seems to mystify me: staying in toxic relationships. I get it. People get comfortable. You get used to someone, you start believing that this is just how relationships are supposed to be, or you feel trapped by circumstances. But when I see people stay in abusive, manipulative, or emotionally draining relationships, I honestly can't wrap my head around it. I once had a friend who was in this incredibly toxic relationship for years. Her partner belittled her, ignored her needs, and frequently crossed boundaries, but she stayed. Every time I'd ask her why she stayed, she'd give me the same reasons: he's just having a rough time, or I don't know what I'd do without him. It was heartbreaking to watch, and I know the advice I gave her was probably too simple to fix everything. I told her to leave, and that was it. But I was genuinely baffled at how someone could prioritize the comfort of a broken relationship over their own well-being. To me, there's no question, I would never choose to stay in a relationship that damages me. I don't care how much history we have, or how much potential someone else sees in it. If someone is treating me poorly or draining my energy, I'm out. I'd rather be alone than be in a relationship that makes me feel small. Choosing to stay in a job you hate. Another one I've never understood is staying in a job you hate. And I don't mean I don't love my job, but it pays the bills. That's one thing. Everyone has bills to pay. But there are so many people I know who just settle for miserable jobs because they think there's nothing else out there for them. I've had conversations with coworkers where they've literally told me they don't care about their job anymore. They'll just show up, do the bare minimum, and go home. But they've been doing this for years, and it's clear it's slowly draining their soul. I've worked some pretty crappy jobs in my life: restaurants, retail, telemarketing, you name it. But I've always made sure that I had a plan to move forward, whether it was going back to school or working on skills that could help me get out of that environment. It's always been about not getting comfortable in a place I hated. I guess I've always had a deep aversion to the idea of wasting time in a job that doesn't fulfill me. Life is short, and I don't want to spend years of it doing something that makes me miserable. The thought of spending decades clocking in and out of a job I can't stand makes me shudder. It's a choice I'd never make, and I honestly don't understand people who just resign themselves to it, settling for mediocre health and wellness. I've also seen people completely disregard their health. And when I say health, I don't just mean physical health, though that's certainly a big part of it. I'm talking about mental health, emotional well-being, and the entire picture. There are so many people I know who live unhealthy lifestyles, ignore their mental health, or refuse to get help for emotional or psychological struggles. They just keep pushing through, convinced that they're too busy or that it's not that bad. One of the most common excuses I hear is, "I don't have time for self-care." But to me, that's just a recipe for burnout. And it's not even just about making the time. It's about actively choosing to prioritize your health and wellness. You can't pour from an empty cup, and I don't know why people don't get that. I'll admit, I'm not perfect. I have my moments where I'm tempted by junk food or skip a workout. But I've always known that my mental and physical health are non-negotiable. I can't imagine letting myself slip into bad habits or neglecting my needs just because I'm too busy. I've seen too many people fall into bad patterns, and I can't imagine living my life like that. I've always made sure to carve out time for meditation, exercise, and proper rest because, in the end, if you don't have your health, you have nothing. Avoiding conflict at all costs. This one is a bit of a personal choice, but it's something I would never do. Avoiding conflict at all costs. I've known a lot of people who hate confrontation and will bend over backward to keep the peace, even if it means their own needs and boundaries are ignored. It's like they've convinced themselves that it's easier to go along with things than to speak up. Whether it's in relationships, at work, or with friends, they avoid any kind of disagreement, even if it's at their own expense. I get that conflict can be uncomfortable. I really do. But I also believe that healthy conflict is necessary. If there's something that bothers me, I'm going to speak up. I'm not going to silently resent someone for months because I'm too afraid to have a hard conversation. I'd rather face the discomfort head-on and get it out in the open. Avoiding conflict at all costs may seem like the easier path, but I think it just leads to more resentment, frustration, and miscommunication in the long run. I've learned that having tough conversations is part of maintaining strong relationships and taking control of my own life. I've seen too many people suffer because they're too afraid to speak their truth, and I don't want to be one of those people. Letting fear dictate your life. Another one I see way too often is letting fear rule your life. I get it. Fear is powerful. It keeps us safe, it stops us from making impulsive decisions, and it keeps us from doing dangerous things. But when fear is allowed to dictate every decision you make, you're never going to grow. I've met people who refuse to take risks, who stay in the comfort of their own little bubble because they're terrified of the unknown. They stick to what's familiar and safe, even if it's holding them back from their potential. And I've also seen people pass up opportunities because they were too afraid of failing. It's honestly tragic. The thing is, I know that failure is part of life. I've failed more times than I can count, and I don't regret a single one of those failures. Every time I failed, I learned something, and that's how I grew. I'd rather try and fail than live my life in fear of what might happen. I can't imagine looking back on my life and realizing that I never took a chance because I was too scared, playing it safe all the time. Lastly, and this one ties into the last point, is playing it safe all the time. Some people just want to live a quiet, predictable life, and while there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, I think there's something to be said for pushing yourself out of your comfort zone once in a while. I know people who have stayed in the same place, with the same people, doing the same things for years on end. They don't try new things, they don't take any risks, and they've never left their small town or tried to do anything out of the ordinary. And while I understand that stability can be comforting, I just don't think I could ever choose a life where nothing changes. I need new experiences, new challenges, and new opportunities to learn. I'd never choose a life of stagnation, no matter how safe it feels. Choices I can't understand. A deeper reflection on life's paths. It's funny how much life is shaped by the decisions we make. There are big choices, like where to live, what career to pursue, and who to build relationships with. Then, there are the smaller decisions, the ones that might not seem significant in the moment, but accumulate over time to determine who we become. I've been reflecting on some of the choices I've seen others make in their lives, and while I don't want to judge, I just can't imagine taking certain paths. Life has a funny way of forcing us to confront difficult decisions, and everyone seems to have their own way of dealing with them. Some of these choices, in my mind, are things I would never, ever choose. I don't think they're inherently wrong or bad, but they're decisions that go against the way I view the world and how I choose to live. And I guess that's why they stand out to me so much. Because I see people making choices that seem so foreign, yet they continue down those paths like they've found peace in them. For me, these are choices I would never make, and maybe by exploring them, I can better understand why. Sacrificing personal fulfillment for stability. Let's talk about something I see all the time. People sacrificing their personal dreams for the sake of stability. It's not that I don't understand the desire for security, I absolutely do. I get the importance of having a stable income, a predictable routine, and a sense of safety. But there's something about giving up your personal fulfillment for the sake of that stability that I just can't get behind. I know several people who have taken jobs simply because they pay well, even though those jobs don't align with their passions or interests. I've heard people say things like, "It's not about doing what I love, it's about making sure I can support myself and my family." And while I respect the dedication to providing, there's a part of me that wonders if there's more to life than just paying the bills. Is there not a space for pursuing what makes you feel alive, even if it's not the easiest or safest path? I've always made it a point to find work that excites me, even if it means taking risks or dealing with uncertainty. And while I get that not everyone has the luxury to pursue a passion, I truly believe that everyone deserves the opportunity to build a life they find fulfilling. The idea of settling into a career that drains you for the sake of security just seems like a recipe for a midlife crisis. It's a path I wouldn't want to go down, staying in a comfort zone that limits growth. Then there's the issue of staying within a comfort zone that doesn't allow for growth. I understand that change can be scary. It's daunting to move to a new city, switch careers, or take on a challenge that feels bigger than you. But at some point, I believe we have to face the fact that growth doesn't happen in the safety of our routines. It happens when we step into the unknown, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and take risks. There's a family member of mine who's been stuck in the same town, doing the same things for their entire life. They've never traveled far from home, never explored new career paths, and their social circle is made up of the same people they've known since childhood. And while I'm sure they're content in many ways, I can't help but feel that they've stopped growing. Their life, while stable and comfortable, seems to have plateaued. There's no excitement, no pushing beyond the familiar. The idea of staying in that comfort zone forever terrifies me. Sure, it's safe, but what happens when you stop challenging yourself? What happens when you're not learning, not evolving, and not exploring the world beyond your front door? I would never choose to live a life that feels static, where growth is put on pause because I'm too scared to embrace change. Life, to me, is about stepping out of comfort and embracing the unknown. Giving up on relationships because they're difficult. One of the more complex decisions I've seen people make involves relationships. Whether it's a romantic partner, a friendship, or even family ties, there's something about giving up on relationships because they're hard that I can't fathom. Yes, relationships take work, and yes, they can be emotionally taxing. But I think one of the greatest challenges we face as humans is learning to love and nurture our relationships, especially when they go through rough patches. I know people who have walked away from friends or family members simply because they couldn't handle the emotional labor involved in working through disagreements or challenges. They've severed ties because it was easier than confronting the discomfort or conflict that comes with truly understanding someone else. For me, relationships are one of the most precious things in life, and the idea of walking away from someone because it's difficult doesn't sit well with me. It's easy to walk away when things get tough, but that doesn't lead to growth or deeper connections. I would rather put in the work to understand and heal a relationship than let it go because I'm afraid of the discomfort it brings. I've learned that relationships, both romantic and platonic, require effort, communication, and patience. And while some relationships may ultimately not work out, I would never choose to throw in the towel at the first sign of difficulty. Ignoring the need for mental health. Another choice that seems increasingly prevalent in our culture is ignoring the importance of mental health. I've encountered people who are clearly struggling, whether it's with anxiety, depression, or just the overwhelming pressures of life. And yet, they choose to ignore it. They refuse to seek therapy, avoid talking about their feelings, or just bottle up their struggles because they think it's a sign of weakness. I've never understood this. Mental health is just as important as physical health, if not more so. But so many people I know treat mental health issues like there's something to be ashamed of or something to just push through. I get it. Sometimes it feels like society values toughness and resilience over vulnerability and self-care. But I would never choose to ignore my mental well-being, no matter how hard it gets. I would never let stigma stop me from seeking the help I need. When I see people avoid therapy, self-care, or simply talking about their mental health, it makes me feel sad for them. It's not weakness to acknowledge when you're struggling, it's strength. And I would never choose to keep my mental health issues hidden in the dark simply because I'm afraid of being judged. I would always choose to confront my struggles head-on and seek support when necessary. Overworking to the point of burnout. I've also seen the dangerous cycle of overworking, and it's something I just can't imagine for myself. I know people who push themselves to the limit for the sake of their careers, working long hours, sacrificing sleep, and giving up any sense of personal time. They're convinced that if they just work harder, they'll achieve success or recognition, and that everything will pay off in the end. But the truth is, burnout is real, and it's ugly. I've seen people become so consumed by their work that they lose sight of what truly matters: relationships, health, and their own well-being. They sacrifice their happiness for the illusion of success, and in the process, they burn out. I value my time too much to let work consume my entire life. I believe that success is important, but not at the expense of my health or personal happiness. I would never allow myself to fall into that trap of overwork, chasing accolades or titles that leave me feeling drained and disconnected from the world around me. Life is too short to let work be the only thing that defines you.